I was locked in my own bedroom like a prisoner. All because I refused to call my dad's new wife Mama. But that night, as I sat on the cold floor, I heard them laughing downstairs, and I overheard her whisper, "Once she apologizes, his signature is mine." I didn't know what she meant, but the next morning, Dad's entire $50 million deal collapsed, and everything he thought he controlled started falling apart. And it all began with one apology I refused to give. Amina always loved her father, Neo. He was her hero, the one who used to braid her hair when she was little and drive her to school even when he was busy. But everything changed the day he married Lethabo. In front of people, Lethabo looked gentle and holy, smiling softly as if she cared for everyone. But when no one else was around, her smile disappeared, and her words turned sharp and cold, cutting Amina in ways no one else could see. One afternoon, Amina and Lethabo had a small argument. It wasn't even serious. Amina only said she didn't like the way Lethabo spoke to her. But Lethabo walked straight to Neo, put on her sweetest face and said, "She disrespected me." That was all Neo needed to hear. He didn't ask Amina what happened. He didn't even look at her properly. He just believed Lethabo. Amina watched her father's expression change, and it broke something in her chest. He didn't pause. He didn't question anything. He simply ordered her to hand over her phone, then her house keys, then her school laptop. He told her she was grounded until she apologized properly to Lethabo. Amina stood there speechless. She felt like the floor was moving under her feet. She wanted to explain, to say that she didn't disrespect anyone, that it was all a lie. But Neo had already turned away, trusting Lethabo more than his own daughter. And Lethabo just stood behind him with that quiet, victorious smile that only Amina could see. When Neo locked her bedroom door from the outside, Amina finally felt the full weight of what was happening. This wasn't just punishment. This wasn't just a mistake. Something was deeply wrong, and her father couldn't see it. She sat on the floor and held her school bag close, feeling like a stranger in her own home. She kept thinking about how fast everything changed. Just months ago, she and her father used to laugh together in the kitchen. Now he wouldn't even listen to her voice, all because Lethabo whispered one lie. Amina realized that this was no normal discipline. It was a punishment that didn't match the truth. A punishment meant to silence her, to push her into submission, to make her kneel for something she didn't even do. And deep inside her heart, Amina felt the first spark of fear. The fear that Lethabo wasn't just a strict stepmother. She was dangerous. That night, Amina sat on the cold floor of her locked room, hugging her knees. The house was quiet, but her heart was heavy. She kept replaying the moment her father took everything from her without asking what really happened. She felt small, trapped, and completely alone. She leaned her head against the wooden door, wishing she could disappear into it. Then she heard something. Soft at first, voices. She held her breath and listened harder. The sound was coming from downstairs, floating up through the quiet house. She recognized her father's voice, tired and slow. Then she heard Lethabo's voice, but it wasn't sad or gentle like she pretended during the day. It was cheerful, almost excited. Amina pressed her ear closer to the door. Lethabo laughed lightly and said, "She's stubborn, but the moment she kneels, Neo will sign whatever I put in front of him." Amina's whole body went still. Kneels? Sign what? Her father had locked her inside her room because Lethabo wanted an apology, but now it sounded like that apology was part of something bigger, something planned. Amina covered her mouth with her hand. She could hear Lethabo moving around the living room, talking freely as if she owned the house. "He trusts emotions more than logic," Lethabo continued. "If she apologizes in front of him, he'll soften. And once he softens, the signature is mine. All I have to do is wait." Amina didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. Her apology wasn't about respect. It wasn't about family. It was about control. Lethabo wanted Neo emotional, guilty, softened. So he would sign something important. Something she clearly wasn't supposed to know about. Her chest tightened painfully. She tried to picture what documents could be so serious that Lethabo needed her to kneel first. She remembered the way her stepmother looked at her earlier with that cold smile. It wasn't anger. It was confidence, like she already knew she was winning. Amina felt a wave of fear wash over her. If Lethabo had a plan and her father couldn't see it, Then Amina was the only one standing in the way. And the locked door suddenly felt even heavier, like it wasn't just wooden anymore. It was a warning. Amina realized she wasn't just being punished. She was being removed, silenced, pushed aside so someone else could control the house, the decisions, and maybe even her father's business. She pressed her forehead against the door and blinked back tears. She didn't know what the documents were. She didn't know who Lethabo was talking to earlier. But one thing became painfully clear. Her apology wasn't just an apology. It was a key. And if she gave it, she would open a door Lethabo was desperate to walk through. A door that could destroy everything. Early the next morning, Amina quietly opened her bedroom door. The house felt strangely calm. Neo had already left for a meeting, and Lethabo had gone out for her morning salon appointment. For the first time in hours, Amina was free to move, but her heart raced with worry. The words she heard last night kept repeating in her mind. Once she kneels, Neo will sign whatever I put in front of him. She didn't know what those papers were, but she knew she had to find out. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she was scared. Something dangerous was happening behind her father's back, and she was the only one who had heard it. She walked slowly toward Lethabo's room, her hands shaking. She had never entered that room without permission, but today she couldn't let fear stop her. She pushed the door gently and stepped inside. Everything was perfectly arranged. Lethabo liked order. Too much order. Amina looked around, trying to think like someone who had something to hide. She checked the drawers first, but they were filled only with clothes and makeup. She opened the wardrobe, but it looked normal too. For a moment, she felt hopeless. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe she had imagined everything. Then her eyes fell on the bed. It was large, heavy, and covered with a perfect white sheet. Something about it made her pause. She slowly knelt and lifted the sheet to look underneath. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. But then her fingers touched something, a hard edge. She pulled it out carefully. It was a folder, thick, sealed, hidden. Her chest tightened as she opened it. Inside were papers, lots of them. Contracts, share agreements, transfer documents, everything organized neatly like someone had been preparing for a big move. As she read the titles, her heart dropped. These papers weren't small things. They were all connected to her father's huge $50 million development deal. The deal he had been working on for months. The deal he was proud of. The deal he thought would secure their future. Amina flipped through the pages quickly, her hands trembling. And on every single document, there was a blank line at the bottom. A space waiting for one thing, Neo's signature. Now everything made sense. Lethabo wasn't angry because of disrespect. She needed Amina to kneel so Neo would become emotional, soft, guilty, and sign these papers without looking closely. She wanted access. She wanted control. She wanted his entire project. Amina felt a cold wave wash over her. She closed the folder and hugged it tightly. Her fear was real. Her father was walking into a trap, and only she knew it. And now she understood. If she didn't act fast, everything he built could disappear with one careless signature. Amina thought the papers were the worst part, but when she kept checking the folder, she noticed a small USB drive taped to the inside cover. Her hand shook as she pulled it off. She didn't know why, but something told her that whatever was inside it would explain everything. She quickly connected it to her small study tablet that her father had forgotten to take away. The moment the audio started, Amina felt her whole body freeze. It was Lethabo's voice, clear and sharp. But she wasn't speaking to Neo. She was speaking to another man. And she wasn't angry or stressed. She was laughing the same fake laugh she used when she wanted something. The man spoke first, his voice calm and confident. He thinks I'm just a silent partner. He doesn't know the real ownership is mine. Amina's breath caught. She knew that voice. Her father had mentioned him before. The man behind the company negotiating the deal. But he was supposed to be a professional partner, not someone Lethabo joked with like an old friend. Then Lethabo replied, "Relax. The moment Amina kneels and apologizes, his heart will soften. Neo always acts from emotion. After that, he'll sign anything. And once he signs, the deal belongs to us." Amina covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. It was all planned. Every insult, every lie, every harsh word. It was all to push her into an apology that would break her father's guard. They weren't just using her. They were using his love for her to destroy him. The man laughed. Good. Once he gives his signature, he'll have nothing left. And you'll finally get control of everything he's built. Amina felt her heart crack. She never liked Lethabo, but she never expected this level of betrayal. This wasn't about being a stepmother. This wasn't about family problems. This was a trap, a slow, careful trap to take everything Neo owned. Lethabo whispered in the recording, his company, his land, his deal, all of it will belong to us. He will lose everything without even knowing how it happened. Amina stopped the audio. Her hands were cold. Her chest ached. She felt a mix of fear, anger, and sadness she didn't know how to hold. Her father had trusted the wrong woman, and she had almost succeeded in destroying him. Amina looked at the folder again, at all the empty spaces waiting for his signature. Lethabo didn't just want his money. She wanted every dream Neo had ever worked for. Every building. Every deal. Every piece of his life. And Amina was the key they wanted to use to open the door. Amina sat on the edge of her bed, the folder hidden under her pillow, her heart still heavy from everything she had discovered. She wanted to tell her father the truth, but she knew he wouldn't believe her. Lethabo had already poisoned his mind, made him blind to anything Amina said. She was still trying to gather courage when the door suddenly flew open. Neo didn't knock. He didn't pause. He walked in with anger written all over his face. You will apologize tonight, he said sharply. No arguments. Amina opened her mouth, desperate to speak, but he raised his hand to silence her. He didn't notice how her hands trembled. He didn't notice her swollen eyes. He didn't notice anything except the story Lethabo had given him. To him, Amina was the stubborn child causing trouble. To him, Lethabo was the victim. I have arranged a dinner, he continued. Important guests are coming. You will apologize in front of them so everyone can see you respect my wife. Amina felt something inside her break. He wasn't listening. He wasn't asking. He was commanding her like she meant nothing. He didn't see the fear on her face or the pain in her chest. He didn't see the folder she held behind her back, the one that could save him from losing everything. Neo turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Don't embarrass me. Tonight ends this disrespect. Then he walked out, closing the door firmly behind him. For a moment, Amina just stood there, staring at the door he had walked through. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She wanted to cry, but the tears refused to fall. She felt trapped between the truth she knew and the father who refused to see it. As evening came, the house changed. Workers set the dining table with candles and fine plates. Expensive wine bottles lined the table. Neo wore his best suit. Lethabo wore a long elegant dress and fake sadness on her face, pretending she cared. Amina watched from the top of the stairs, her heart pounding. She could see company partners arriving one by one, smiling politely, unaware of the storm brewing inside the house. Everyone sat down, waiting for the moment Neo had spoken about, waiting for Amina to kneel. Lethabo sat straight, confident, certain the plan was working. Neo kept glancing at the stairs, expecting his daughter to come down and bow her head. But Amina didn't walk down with guilt. She walked down with the folder held tightly in her hands. Knowing this dinner was not going to end the way Lethabo expected, Amina walked into the dining room slowly, holding the folder close to her chest. Every eye in the room turned toward her. The long table was filled with shining plates, candles, and important business partners dressed in suits. Neo sat at the head of the table, looking proud and strict, while Lethabo sat beside him wearing a soft, innocent smile that hid her true intentions. Amina felt her stomach twist, but she forced herself to keep walking. Neo stood up. Amina, come here, he said firmly. Tonight you will apologize. Amina didn't move closer. She stayed at the end of the table, her fingers gripping the folder. Neo didn't notice her fear or the pain in her eyes. He only saw what he wanted to see, a daughter who needed discipline. The partners watched quietly, unsure of what was happening. Lethabo lowered her gaze and pretended to wipe a tear, acting like she was the one hurt. Amina, Neo repeated louder, apologize now. Everyone waited for her to kneel. Lethabo straightened her back proudly, thinking the moment had finally come. The plan was almost complete. Amina just had to bend, and Neo would become soft enough to sign anything. But instead of kneeling, Amina slowly opened the folder. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I have something to show you. Neo frowned, confused. Lethabo's smile disappeared instantly. The partners leaned forward, sensing tension in the air. Without a word, Amina pulled out the USB and connected it to the speaker on the table. Then she pressed play. Lethabo's laughter filled the room. The exact same laugh Amina had heard the night before. The same laugh she used when she knew she was winning. Then came the man's voice, the secret owner behind the company. The partners recognized him immediately. We just need Neo emotional, he said in the recording. Once the girl apologizes, he'll sign everything. The guests exchanged shocked looks. Neo's eyes widened. He looked at Lethabo sharply, but she stayed frozen. Then came Lethabo's voice, clear and sharp. Once she apologizes, the fool signs. The room turned cold. The partners gasped. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Neo's face went pale. He looked like the ground had been pulled from under him. Lethabo didn't blink. She didn't speak. Her plan, her secret, her lies, all of it was playing out loud in front of the most important people in the company. Amina looked straight at her father with tears in her eyes, but her voice was calm. This is why I refused to bow. The entire room fell silent. Neo finally understood. And for the first time, he saw who the real enemy was. And it wasn't his daughter. The moment the recording ended, the entire dining room changed. The warm lights suddenly felt cold, and every person sitting at the table stared at Neo with shock and pity. One of the senior partners slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. His face had turned tight and serious. He looked at Neo and whispered, "We know that voice. That man, he's not a partner. He's a predator." Another partner nodded quickly. He has destroyed 2 companies before. He hides behind other businesses, gains trust, then takes everything. Neo, he was planning the same thing with you. Neo's hands shook as he picked up the contract lying on the table. His eyes scanned the pages, and for the first time, he noticed all the traps hidden in the fine print. Small changes, silent clauses, and transfer rights that would have moved control to the rival investor. He realized how close he had come to losing not just a deal, but his entire company. "If I had signed this," Neo whispered, unable to finish the sentence. One partner completed it for him. "You would have lost everything. Your company, your land, your rights. Everything." A thick silence filled the room. Neo's face went pale and stiff. He looked at Lethabo, who sat completely still, pretending to be confused. She pressed her hand to her chest like she was the victim. But her eyes betrayed her. They were scared, not shocked. Then the partners made their decision. "We cannot continue with this deal," one of them said firmly. "This is too dangerous." "Yes," another added. "Our investors will not put their money into a project connected to a scandal." Within minutes, phones started ringing. More calls came. More messages. Word spread fast. Investors withdrew their funds. Business partners backed out. Contracts that were months in the making were canceled. The $50 million project that Neo had proudly built from scratch collapsed like a house made of paper. Everything he had worked for slipped through his fingers in a single night. Neo sank into his chair, staring at the table like he couldn't believe what was happening. His reputation, his plans, his hard work, all destroyed by the woman he trusted. Meanwhile, Lethabo kept touching her forehead, forcing tears, saying, "I didn't know. I didn't understand." But no one believed her anymore. The recording had exposed her completely. Neo looked at her with pain and betrayal written on his face. He finally realized the truth. The destruction happening in front of him wasn't an accident. It was the result of her lies, her manipulation, and her secret plan. And while Amina stood quietly at the corner of the room, he finally understood how close he had come to losing everything, including the daughter he had almost sacrificed for a woman who never loved him. By the next morning, the house felt different. The dining room was still a mess from the night before. Chairs pushed back, glasses half-filled, papers scattered. But the biggest change was the silence. No pretending. No fake smiles. No acting. Just the truth sitting heavy in the air. Amina woke up early, her heart still tired from everything she had revealed. She stepped out of her room quietly, not knowing what she would find. As she walked down the hallway, she heard the sound of drawers opening and closing fast, like someone was packing in a hurry. When she reached the living room, she froze. Lethabo was dragging 2 large suitcases across the floor. She didn't look scared. She didn't look ashamed. She looked angry. Angry that her plan had failed. She kept muttering under her breath, blaming everyone except herself. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even try to explain. She just wanted to run before Neo stopped her. Amina watched from the stairs as Lethabo headed toward the front door. Her movements were quick and sharp, like someone who had been caught stealing, and was trying to escape before the police arrived. She didn't look back at the house. She had pretended to love. She didn't look for Neo. She didn't even bother to check if her lies could be fixed. She just wanted out. But as soon as she reached the entrance, Neo appeared. He looked tired, disappointed, and older than he had the night before. 2 security guards stood behind him, their arms crossed. He didn't shout, and he didn't ask why. He simply looked at Lethabo with eyes full of pain and betrayal. "So you're running," he said quietly. Lethabo didn't answer. She lifted her chin and held onto her suitcases tightly. Neo raised the folder Amina had found, the contracts, the recordings, the proof of everything. "You plan to take my company," he said. "You plan to destroy everything I built." Still, she stayed silent. Not a single sorry. Neo nodded once, as if he finally accepted who she truly was. He stepped aside slightly and motioned to the guards. "Escort her out. Make sure she doesn't come back." For a moment, Lethabo's face cracked. Her confidence broke like glass. She had expected Neo to defend her, to doubt Amina, to try to fix things like he always did. But this time he didn't protect her. He didn't beg her to stay. He let her face the consequences she had created. The guards took her suitcases and walked her out of the house. She didn't look like a powerful wife anymore. She looked like someone being removed from a place she never deserved. The same house where she once locked Amina in her room was now pushing her out. Amina watched quietly as the door closed behind Lethabo, leaving only the truth and the damage she almost caused. Neo stood still for a long time. Then he turned around, knowing the woman he trusted had walked out forever, and the daughter he hurt was the only one who had protected him. The house was quiet now. The chaos from the night before had faded, leaving only a stillness that felt heavy in the air. Neo walked slowly through the hallway, his hands in his pockets, his head bowed. The defeat from losing the deal, seeing Lethabo exposed, and realizing how close he had come to disaster pressed on him like a weight he couldn't shake. Every step felt uncertain, like he was walking on fragile ground. When he reached the backyard, he saw her. Amina was sitting on the edge of the small fountain, her knees pulled close to her chest. The morning sun hit her face, but she didn't notice it. Her eyes were distant, staring at nothing, lost in thoughts only she could see. She didn't move when Neo appeared. She didn't call him. She just stayed there, quiet and still, carrying the weight of the night and everything it had revealed. Neo stopped a few steps away, unsure how to bridge the distance he had caused. Every memory of anger, of grounding her, of believing Lethabo over her, pressed on him now. He had been blind, and the cost was almost everything he had worked for. He knelt slightly, as if lowering himself to the same level, but still kept a careful distance, afraid to frighten her. "I trusted the wrong person," he whispered, his voice low and trembling. "And I punished the only one who loved me." Amina didn't answer. She didn't move. She only blinked slowly, letting the words sink into her. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because the hurt was still too raw. The betrayal, the fear, the nights spent locked inside her room. The knowledge that her father almost gave everything to a woman who didn't deserve it. It all sat like a heavy stone in her chest. Neo sat on the edge of the fountain beside her, careful not to touch her, careful not to disturb her space. He didn't know if she would speak. He didn't know if she would forgive him. He only knew that he had been wrong, that he had almost lost the daughter who had never stopped caring for him, who had stayed true while he had been blind. Minutes passed. The wind moved gently over the garden, rustling the leaves, but the silence between them was thicker than ever. Neo kept his eyes on her, feeling every mistake, every moment he had doubted her. Finally, he exhaled slowly, letting the truth settle between them. He had failed her once, but he couldn't fail again. He had lost control of everything else, the deal, the business, the trust of others. But he still had the chance to repair the one thing money could never buy back, his daughter's heart. Amina remained quiet, but Neo understood her silence. It wasn't rejection. It was caution. and for the first time, he realized that earning her trust again would take more than words. It would take time, patience, and proving he could be the father she always needed. Neo tried everything he could think of to make things right. He set new rules in the house, hoping structure would help. He tried new boundaries, giving Amina space, and made promises he swore he would keep. He wanted her to come back, to smile at him like before, to call him dad, with the same warmth she used to. But Amina didn't move back into the main house. She didn't let herself be pulled into the same closeness she once had. She wasn't angry or cruel. She just refused to be manipulated again. Her love for him hadn't disappeared, but her trust had been broken, and she wouldn't give it freely. Neo lost a lot that year. The $50 million deal he had worked for collapsed completely. Lethabo, the woman he thought he could trust, was gone from his life, and he realized he had never truly known her. But the hardest loss of all wasn't money or betrayal. It was the distance between him and his daughter. He had been handed the chance to protect everything he built, but he almost threw it away because he ignored the truth and believed the wrong person. Now the one thing he couldn't buy, couldn't negotiate, and couldn't fix with money was Amina's trust. Every evening, Neo walked past her door, and every evening, the memory of that night came back to him. The night he had locked her in her room, thinking he was punishing her. The night he had almost let her apology be used to sign away everything he valued. He remembered the cold floor, the fear in her eyes, and the courage she had shown by discovering the truth. That night, Amina had done what he couldn't. She saved him from losing it all. Neo realized, with a quiet ache in his chest, that the apology he once demanded from her had become the one he now owed. He owed it to her for believing in what she saw, for standing firm when he almost failed, and for loving him even when he didn't see it. No amount of money could repair what had been broken in those months. But he knew he had to prove, day by day, that he could be the father she deserved. And though she didn't return to the same closeness she had before, Neo understood that this distance was her way of protecting herself. He had learned the hardest lesson. Some things can't be forced. Some things, like trust and love, must be earned. And Amina had already shown him the true meaning of both.